May the words of my mouth and the meditation of all our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Last Sunday here at church, we had evensong at 5 o'clock, and afterward we had a little reception over in the barber rooms. And as the crowd was starting to thin, there were some little ones who were here, and they started running around and playing. They were laughing hysterically, and it was joyful. And there was a group of us who were sitting there watching the kids play, and we all had smiles on our faces as well, because the joy was contagious. And as often happens when parents of slightly older kids are watching slightly younger kids play, the question came up: do you ever miss this age? Would you ever go back and do it all over again? And I love kids. I really do. I am grateful for the presence of so many little ones here at All Saints, from tiny babies to kids, to our teens, to our young adults. We've got a wonderful group of young people here at All Saints, and they are genuinely fun to be around. I'm teaching 5th grade religion this year over at our day school just so I have an excuse to spend some more time around kids. It's life-giving, and people know that about me. And that's why they're always surprised that my answer to that question, would you go back and would you do it again, is swift and decisive. No. No, thank you. Not for any amount of money would I do that. Because as much fun as it is to snuggle other people's babies or to play with other people's kids, when you're the parent of those kids, you are on call 24/7. You are the teacher, you're the entertainer, you're the cook, you're the maid, you're the doctor, you're the nurse, you are everything. And it's exhausting. And now that my kids are a little bit older, they're turning into pretty cool people. Elias and Allie both have friends that they spend time with so that I don't have to entertain them all the time. They have interests that keep them busy and make them more interesting people. They are like little mini adults running around. And they're useful too. I've been writing a book for the last couple months, and every time I finish a chapter, the first person I give that chapter to is Allie. And she reads the whole thing and sits down and talks to me about it and says, "Dad, here's what I liked. Here's what you still need to work on." Elias comes in the kitchen and helps me with dinner often and is begging me right now to join choir, which, if you know my son, is very high praise from him, because choir is everything to Elias. And when I look at my kids and I see the point in life where they are at, it is a great moment to be a dad. To see my kids start to find their passions, to start to see the things that make them tick, to get a glimpse of the people that they are on their way to becoming. And it is joyful and it is fulfilling. And I think this phase of parenting is a good place for us to approach our lessons today. Starting with Proverbs 31, which is a text that makes some people roll their eyes. And I think part of the reason for that is because it has been co-opted by certain branches of Christianity that use this text to paint the picture of something that they call biblical womanhood. For those of you who aren't familiar with this concept, there's a story from the church of my youth that I think really paints the picture of this. Every year on Mother's Day, the pastor at my church would read a modernized, and I'm using that term very loosely, a modernized version of Proverbs 31 that praised the women in our community for mending boo-boos and repairing socks with holes in them and packing lunches and doing homework for the kids. It was very focused on domestic labor. and that was the job of a woman and a mother. And that's supposed to be the message of Proverbs 31. And I'm not going to say that that stuff isn't in this passage, because this woman who's written about in this text is a wife and a mother. And she gets up early to make her family breakfast, and she takes care of them and watches after all of them. But if that's all you get out of this, that is a very narrow, reductionist view of what this woman is all about. Because she is a Jewish woman living in the BC times who has a successful business that is thriving. Her goods are sought after in the marketplace. She makes enough money at what she does to be able to buy a field and just plant a vineyard. She has a level of economic independence that is almost unheard of in her time and in her culture. She sounds much more like the kind of woman that the New York Times would write about today under a headline, "Can Women Really Have It All? Can women balance the demands of career and being a spouse and being a mother?" That's the kind of woman that this is. And she has been empowered to do all of these things. And what we learn from this text is that she does all of them extraordinarily well. And it's because she is in this place of empowerment where she is free to make decisions about herself and the direction of her family and her businesses that her children are inspired by her. There is a very small detail that comes near the end of this passage. Of all of the things that her children could say about her, my mother is successful, she's hardworking, she's ambitious. The word that they choose to use to describe her is happy. Because they see in their mother a woman who is being fulfilled by the tasks that she takes on, the things that she wants to do that challenge her and inspire her. She does them, and she does them well. And in that, she finds joy. Her children see that in her and are inspired by that. And I have to believe that it goes both ways. I have to believe that this mother wants the same for her own children. This week we were in a very long board meeting over at the day school campus, and we're talking about the future of the day school and how we can best meet the needs of our students today so that they're prepared for high school and beyond. And one of the things that came up in that meeting that is so fascinating to me, and I've heard this research before, but it was a great reminder. When you ask parents what they want most for their children, more than getting into the best high schools or colleges, more than having a great high-paying career, the one thing that parents say, almost without fail, that they want for their children is for them to be happy. They want them to find work that they enjoy, that they can excel at. They want them to surround themselves with people who love them and who care for them and who form a community of support where they can be themselves and be happy. And I think this desire among parents to just see their kids make choices that are going to bring joy and fulfillment to their lives is a great example of something that is not very well understood in our culture, I would argue. And that is servant leadership. Because so often when we hear this term servant leadership, we think it's really about whoever is in charge is the one cleaning the dishes and doing all the work for everybody else. It's like an endless community service activity that just keeps on grinding and grinding and grinding. And you are always in the position of giving yourself away. But that's not what servant leadership is all about, because that's just service. Servant leadership is about service with a purpose. And I think at the heart of it, that's what parents want for their children. They want to nurture their children and encourage them and support them so that they will grow up to be the people who can find a fulfilling career and an affirming community. Nobody wants to be the parent who is still making sure that their kids' shoes are tied at 20 years old. Nobody wants to be packing lunches at 35. At some point, you want to know that your kids are ready and capable to take care of themselves and you want to teach them to crawl and then to walk and then to run and hopefully eventually to fly. To soar, to achieve something that is beyond your wildest dreams or expectations for them. That's what servant leadership is about. Serving, but with a purpose. And I think Jesus understood that, because Jesus and the disciples are again walking along, trying to get away from the crowds, trying to have a private conversation. And as they're moving from place to place, the disciples start bickering. And what they're fighting about is who's basically the best, who's the boss, who's in charge, who's the best preacher, who does the best healings, who is Jesus' favorite disciple. This is the argument they're having, because in their minds it is all of these things that will make them be the best, the top disciple, the one who is in charge of all the others, right behind Jesus. Jesus hears their conversation, and I'm sure he's grinning to himself and just waiting for the perfect moment. And when they get into the house at Capernaum, it happens. He says, "Hey, so what were you guys talking about back there?" And they're ashamed. They don't want to admit what they've been talking about because they know it's not going to end well for them. And Jesus takes their ideas and their expectations about what it means to be the leader. And as he so often does, he turns it on its head. He says, if you want to be the first, if you want to be the boss, if you want to be the leader, you have to be willing to be the servant of all. And just to make that point especially clear, he does something extraordinary. He brings a child in among the disciples. And he has the child sit down in the middle of them. And he says, whoever welcomes one like this welcomes me, and welcomes the one who sent me. Friends, we know that this child is a blank slate in some ways. They don't have the baggage or the expectations that the disciples have. They're innocent. They're on their way to becoming. And it's the job of this community, and of that community as well, to train this child up to be a faithful disciple, to follow, to be a good person, and as they grow into that role, eventually to lead. Because what Jesus is telling the disciples in this moment is, it doesn't matter how many great sermons you give, it doesn't matter how many healings you do. What matters more than anything is what you will do to bring up the generation behind you. How you will serve this little one so that he understands that he is a person of value with something to contribute. That is what makes a difference. It is serving with a purpose. So my question for us today at All Saints is this: how can we continue to grow in our call to be servant leaders? Who are the people and who are the communities that God is calling us to serve today, so that one day they too can be empowered to become the people that God is calling them to be joyful and fulfilled, and to know that their lives and that their work make a difference in the kingdom? There are a couple groups that come to mind immediately for me, and one of them I've already mentioned in this sermon. It's the young people in our parish. My friends, we are blessed when you look around at All Saints to see a church that has more and more young people in it every single week. And when we offer programs like Sunday School, when Cesare takes the kids out week after week for Children's Chapel, when we do youth group and formation activities and service projects, these are not just things that we're doing to keep our kids occupied, to get them out of church on Sunday morning so that the adults can have a quiet space to reflect. We are teaching these kids that you have a place and a role in this community, that you have something unique and wonderful to offer. And we want to put our arms around you. We want to serve you so that you can grow into the disciples that Jesus is calling you to be. That makes a difference. September also happens to be Prison Awareness Month. And as we are winding the month of September down, It's worth reflecting on the fact that the work that we do with the women who are incarcerated at Perryville Prison and their families is a major part of the identity of this place. And we don't just write cards and letters because it feels good for us to do that in the moment. We don't just show up before Christmas with a carload of gifts because it's the right thing to do. The reason we're doing that is because we are putting our arms around these women and their families and telling them that you are seen and loved and cared for. That we are here to build you up, to encourage you on your journey to wholeness and to healing. That you are a beloved child of God and that we believe in you. My friends, this is the work we are called to do. To put our arms around people and to bring them to that place where they can live into their purpose and their destiny, so that they can be empowered to be all that God is calling them to be. It is hard work, but it's work that we can do together. Amen.